Well, here I am at the base of Penn Street. This is going to be a short video, maybe part of a new series on, I'm not sure what to call it, nooks and crannies of Pottstown. Probably places in Pottstown that, that you might not be familiar with. Downtown Pottstown, of course, within walking distance of my neighborhood, which is just north of High Street on Evans. So I'm at the base of Penn Street, which is a very narrow street for Pottstown. This area down here, one of my sources is the Geologic Survey maps, which in Pottstown begin about 1906. And so you can see what was here on the map, and they're very detailed maps. So this area down here was pretty much train yards and iron foundries, steel foundries, back in 1906. It wasn't like you see it today. Oh, look, here's somebody driving down Queen Street, which always kind of amazes me that people actually drive down this street. Not that they do. So I'm going to walk up Penn Street to the end. It's kind of interesting where it ends up, and we'll look at a few things along the way. All right, that's me. A few years ago, probably like a dozen years ago, before I moved to Pottstown, I've been here 10 years, there was this, oh, there goes a helicopter. There was a, I don't know what you call it, like a movement in Pottstown to paint these old-fashioned like billboards on the sides of buildings. And this one here, Luden's, is pretty great. Oh, here we go again. And of course, if you look over there, there's an entrance to Sears, which you can still read. Oh no, there it is right there. The entrance to Sears. So these are really nice. I really like these things, these signs. They're kept, they're maintained, so they look fresh. There's a Coca-Cola on High Street, and there's a Wrigley's on Hanover, south of High Street. And I just have to say that I've always said that nothing screams distressed city or town. Nothing screams it louder than wall murals. Oh, they're going to make everything look great, but this is a great way to do it because it kind of adds an old-timey charm, right? Oh, it's called Luden's Menthol Candies. Candy cough drops. Yeah, I used to eat them when I was a kid. I kind of like them. So here's our first crossing at High Street. Some of the thriving businesses down here, the Army-Navy store, J.J. Radigan's brewery, this Laserworks place, which has been here a long time. I guess they make engraved, plastic plaques and stuff. So the story about High Street, it's just a story, I think, apocryphal, is that the reason it's so wide is that John Potts said, I want to be able to turn a team of horses with a wagon. I want to be able to turn it around in the street. Because, I just imagine you've seen tractor trailers back up, turn around and stuff, and it's complicated maneuver. And I bet with horses, driving your horses backwards and angling your wagon to turn around in a narrow space, that must have been quite a feat. And that's why they were called teamsters. Okay, we're going to continue up. This is kind of a very charming part of Penn Street. So now we've crossed High Street. We're here at what used to be Juan Carlos is now El Volcán, which is a very nice Mexican restaurant. This is one of my favorite blocks. Look at this upstairs apartment. Must have been pretty swanky. Look at these bay windows, whatever you call them. But a city at some point Pottstown's made some good decisions. They paved this with brick, but of course they did it right, so it's in nice shape. It's easy to walk. Let's walk up a little more. Here's another architectural detail that I just love in Pottstown. And what we're encountering here is Pottstown is a city of alleys, like Chicago, Philadelphia. Philadelphia has a lot of narrow streets like this, only they're actually much narrower. We only have this one, really, but we do have our alleys, and behind businesses, they're pretty much garbage bins and stuff. But if you have a house that abuts up to one of these, it's nice because you have your own off-street parking. Your garbage is collected in the back instead of the front. But of course, today there are so many houses are broken into rentals that a lot of people do not have that option. So this is an interesting thing. This little place here, this in the, if you go on YouTube and look, search for Pottstown, PA, 1960s Yellow Pages. You'll find I have a series of videos. One of them is about all the restaurants listed in the 1960 Yellow Pages phone book. And this was a luncheonette. I can't remember the woman's name. There were a bunch of luncheonettes that were run by women. And this was one. Can you imagine this as a little luncheonette? Right off a high street. Businessmen, who had to get a lunch and they didn't brown bag it. They were maybe the more prosperous businessmen or the owners of businesses. They would go out for lunch, and you can see on that video of the restaurants, there are at least 20 restaurants in downtown Pottstown, not out in the hinterlands, that are now empty lots. They're parking lots, or in some cases, they're still existing, like the diner was there in 1960, and one or two others. Oh yeah, Very Best Hot Dog, which is listed as Very Best Wiener Shop. That's still going strong. A great restaurant in Pottstown. So this is a feature of this area, in Pottstown specifically, that I noticed when I moved down here from New York. It's the rear side porch, which would be off the kitchen, covered porch, so you could shell your peas and do whatever else you had to do in the kitchen. This building and the house next to it have been repurposed as law offices. They've done a nice job. I like especially those louvered, like shutters for privacy. Okay, so now we're here at King Street. Pottstown likes its kings and queens. You have Hanover Street after the House of Hanover, which is now called the House of Windsor. And you have King Street, you got Queen Street, and, I guess that's about it. There's no George Street. But anyhow, here's the old City Hall, which is now apartments. This is the old telephone exchange, a massive building to contain all those mechanical switches that used to route your calls. And to the right of City Hall, which you can't really, it's a parking lot now, that was the Opera House. So anybody who's read the Magic Grocery Store or something, that novel about old-time Pottstown, they mention, a theater. It's the history in that book is not that specific to Pottstown. But anyhow, there was a big opera house in the parking lot of City Hall, and it was torn down to make the parking lot. That story comes up again and again. Building was removed to make a parking lot because, parking lots were going to save Pottstown in the 80s when all the business left. We know how that goes. But, the thing about Pottstown is, Thing about Pottstown is the beautiful downtown area has had very little urban renewal. Oh, how do you like that? Sorry. Yeah, I'm oblivious. Very little urban renewal. So, High Street and much of Pottstown is in good shape. So now we're coming up to Chestnut Street. And this building here, with its magnificent tower, which you can't see from here. I'll try to show it. This is the Phillies, what's it called? The Philadelphia Fire Company. And I think there's still 3 or 4 fire companies in Pottstown. They're manned by volunteers, and every firehouse has a paid guy, city employee on the premises, I think at all times. So it's kind of semi-professional. But let me show you this. This is a great story I heard from, I was once riding by on my bicycle, and I met a guy. Well, he was standing out in front of a house, maybe 1 or 2 to the left of the firehouse. And, I asked him, this is Pottstown, this isn't Philadelphia, so why is it called the Philadelphia Fire Company? And he told me this story that back a while ago, they needed a new fire truck, so they bought a used fire truck from Philadelphia. And those old fire trucks, like the present day fire trucks, are all painted beautifully with beautiful lettering and stuff. And he said, well, it was already painted Philadelphia Fire Company. So they just changed the name of the fire company to match the truck. I don't know if this story is true, but it's a great story. So this is Chestnut Street, which I think is one of the nicest streets in Pottstown. The old burial grounds right over there with John Potts. And now this block on this side is now the back end parking lots of the churches. Some of them are quite fine churches. Anyone who's been in Emmanuel Lutheran, I was astonished to see how beautiful it is inside and how extensive. So let's see, can we see the tower? Oh, you can just see it peeking over the back. Now, I heard something, I think I read something somewhere that tower had to be shortened at one point because for some reason Pottstown had a height restriction. But it couldn't have been very high because it's not very high now, but it's a beautiful tower. It kind of looks almost like Tuscan, if you can kind of make that out. All right, we shall continue. Our next stop is Walnut Street. Okay, so here's Walnut. That's Emmanuel Lutheran. These are the Pottstown Schools Administration buildings. And there's Walnut. Now, Walnut's one of my favorite streets. It doesn't have the grand houses, but it has some of my favorite houses. I like that one right there with that porch. It's got like 18-foot span. It must be cantilever. It also has, I believe, one of the oldest houses in downtown Pottstown. I think it's right over there, 1802 or something. Must have been a little farmhouse originally before. Because Pottstown really, these streets, up until the Civil War, after the Civil War and during the Civil War, there was a boom, in Pottstown because of the iron and steel. And these streets, like I know Walnut Street in the 1870 bird's eye view map, the houses are very spotty. There are only a few houses here and there. And then by 1870, it was chock-a-block row houses. So we're going to walk down here now. It starts to get kind of interesting back here. I saw on the old, not very old, historical survey map that if you stood here in like 1920, besides the high school being right behind this building, there was a huge water tower. Or, I don't know how huge, because on the map it says water tower. So there was a water tower right here. Kind of hard to imagine. So if you don't look this way, which is kind of boring, but you look this way, this is a great view of, old-timey Pottstown, these backyards. We're coming up to one of the nice alleys. I think this is called Union Alley. They're all named. Look on an old map. They're all named. So this is a more, resident. Is this an alley? Yeah, this is a kind of well-maintained alley. Kind of nice. Most of them aren't really paved, or maybe they were paved like 50 years ago. But this is a nice walk here. Yeah, they have a lot of these. Look at this, a stone. Is that a stone garage? Yeah, pretty substantial. I want to do a video on coach houses in Pottstown. A doctor who worked in Pottstown, he had to have a horse and carriage to, get him around. So he had to maintain a horse and a carriage and somebody to look after it. So they would have coach houses with the horse downstairs and then somebody to take care of the horse upstairs. So I believe this is where the high school was. I'm not certain. It's on the old maps and now I guess this was a school. I don't think it's a school anymore. But now we're at Beach Street. So this is, a two-way street, so it's a little busier. There's parking on one side here. Some places there's parking on both sides. So there's St. Aloysius Catholic Church with that kind of extraordinary, what do you call it, rectory, right? Where the priests lived on this side. So now we're getting kind of a little more kind of rural, sort of. So look at the size of this building. This is a big house. It's got a front parlor, and then these windows are probably, oh no, they're not over the stairs. Stairs must be on the other side, but they got the nice little bay window up there. So I don't know what this is. This big blank wall. I'd also like to do, actually started it once, the alleys, because there's all kinds of interesting little buildings that were probably like, the lawnmower repair shop, or even like a machinist could work independently in his own little place. You could also do a whole video on the awnings. Pottstown is real big on awnings. Probably from, before home air conditioning, or this was maybe considered a cheaper alternative to keeping your house cool. Because there's a lot of that in Pottstown. Look at this, never seen one of these. Speed limit 15. Wow. Slow down. So now we're at 3rd Street, Penn Alley, and this is 3rd Street, which almost seems like an alley. This ends over on Hanover. There's a steep hill right by St. Aloysius School. I think maybe we're looking at the back of the school. So this is where you see Penn Alley makes a little turn here. And I read somewhere that 4th Street, which, the next street, it was the first suburb of Pottstown, built probably around 1900. Hanover Street, Pottstown had a trolley that went down High Street, but then a competitor came in and they built one that actually, came from toward Philly and went through Pottstown on like Queen Street, a lot of it, and then King Street, and then it turned up Charlotte, and it actually ended up in Reading. It's a really interesting trolley. It went to the Ringing Rocks amusement park, which was a big thing with trolley companies. Nobody would ride the trolley on weekends, so they would build an amusement park just to get riders, because everyone took it to work. But I love this spot. This is like, it's like a big square. Now this, I don't, I hear stories about what this was. I think that factory building, I think was probably clothing manufacturer, which Pottstown had a lot of large and small clothing manufacturers. But now this place recently was a tire warehouse. It might have been a furniture warehouse, maybe. I really don't know. But this is really cool. So that building over there is being, you can see all new windows, apartments. They're turning it into apartments. And the same company is doing the Mercury building, the old newspaper building. So, but then we have these little houses kind of set askew. Down there you see, I believe that must be Hanover Street. And now we're going to walk this way. I hope the sun isn't, yeah, these phone cameras handle sun pretty well. So we're going to walk up here and look around these wood frame buildings. So I imagine they might be kind of old. There's one in particular that I love. So we're just walking up. I don't even know what this is called. Is this, no, 3rd Street we passed. So I don't know, these are driveways or something. But this is a spot I really love. It faces this huge industrial building. Well, huge for downtown Pottstown. But look at this little house. You think this could have been a farmhouse? How old is it? I just love it. I also love walking on gravel. It reminds me when I was a little kid, we lived on a farm and it had miles of gravel roads, and it takes me back. So what is this? Here's a little, something was going on here 50 years ago, some kind of light manufacturing, like I said, could have been a machine shop, but this is sweet. So this is just kind of a maze of little alleys. And here's 2 more kind of industrial buildings, These are, some of these buildings are tiny. They're like a tiny garage, but it kind of looks like a storefront. What's this? Is this the back of a, no, it has that big chimney. So it probably had some kind of furnace or something. That's not for a home. So this one here has that thing pointing out of the roof there. So that was a winch. And then there's that door under it. So they could lift stuff up out of the wagons or the trucks. And they could bring it upstairs. So this was, there was something going on here. I'm going to walk out to Charlotte. That's the end of Penn Street for now. I don't think it doesn't extend anywhere. So, before the 1950s, I know this is true for New York City. Maybe they weren't as strict in Pottstown, because they're not that strict in Pottstown about things like parking. They, in New York City till 1950, on-street parking overnight was forbidden. So if you had a car, if you were rich enough to have a car, you were rich enough to store it off-street. And that's why you see old movies like noir movies and stuff. And you see a street in New York at night and there are no parked cars, which, imagine Pottstown with no parked cars. Well, not so good for the car owners. So here we are on Charlotte. Imagine the trolley going up Charlotte, taking a ride up by Redner's, and then a left up into Gilbertsville, across to Boyertown, where you had to switch trains because it didn't cross the railroad tracks. Then you hop on the other trolley, and you go through all this farmland to Reading. You go by farms. If you've ever been out to the farm on Covered Bridge Road, the trolley went right through that farm. So they had a way to get their milk and fresh produce to market. Okay, that's it for Penn Street. One of my favorite streets in Pottstown. Oh, here we go. There I am. So I'm just a couple blocks from home. I'll stop for a coffee at Beekeeper Cafe, which I understand is doing pretty well. Oh, it's Monday. They're probably closed. Okay. Ciao for now.